file name should be your own name. Well, you can put more than your own name, but it should include your own name. So, for instance, if it was Denise's file, she would put Anissa Martin in the file name, and then if you want to put after it measurement task or something, or just that, that's fine. And one file. So how you combine everything, if you're taking pictures, combine it into one file. So maybe use Google Slides or a PDF or a Word document, and one file. So combine into one file. Does anyone have an issue with this? Or is that okay? I take silence as an issue. If you do have an issue with it, do let me know at the end when I dismiss you. Okay, so that's what we need. So at this moment, you should have a surface area completed. You should have the surface area of at least 3 walls of your room. Now, everybody should have different answers, unless you did the same room as somebody else, unless you're working on the same room. Can we get the answers typed in the chat, and whether you use meters or centimeters? Just want to get a flavor of your answers. If you have an answer, you don't have to have an answer yet. You can still work on that today. But if you got an answer, type it in the chat there.
For the walls, right?
Yeah, the total surface area. So what we're looking for is you to type total surface area into the chat. Type that into your chat. All right. So Upes is 24 meters squared. I think that's a realistic answer. Osborne 40.7, also realistic. Priyanka seems okay. 54. 37.76. Lewis, yeah. Okay. If anyone else wants to type it in there, they can. You don't have to have it yet. You'll need it for tomorrow. Laura's done her in centimeters. Okay, Olivia's done in meters. Yeah, 29,700. Okay, anybody else with theirs? You'd want to be probably over 10 meters squared and stuff. No, I don't want your price yet. That's a different question. 67 must be a very big room. Maybe you're including, if you've got a ceiling, yeah, it's going to be quite a large area. If you've not got a ceiling, well, it depends on the size of the room. All these answers seem reasonable. So, yeah. Charlie?
I uploaded my thing, but I forgot to do the total surface area. So, can you delete it off like when you've submitted it, or should I just
Yeah, I'll delete it for you. And
okay, I'll submit my real one later then.
Yeah, no one should have put
anything
in yet, because the advice you get on. So I see Charlie and you put both on it, and the advice I'm giving on part 4 and 5 you haven't heard yet, so I doubt you would be in the position to do that yet. Anyway, remember, just for part 1, just a little reminder, for part 1 we need nice clear diagrams like we did. Watch the video from yesterday with bits that won't be in there, measurements included on them, draw with a ruler. So measurements should be on this, and include every little detail like air conditioning units, fans, anything that can't be removed. Some sockets, perhaps. Maybe there's little electricity sockets. Maybe you have to get the area of those and take them away. The more of those calculations you do and the more detail you go in, it'd be a better grade for your realism. And this task is going to be marked off your ability to use maths in real life, and your discussion on accuracy, which we'll talk about in a second, and how you lay out all this work, how you communicate all your work, how you show your workings. It's very important in this task. So it's not about all your answers are not going to be the same, obviously, because we're all doing different rooms. So it's not about getting a specific right answer. There is no right answer. We'll talk about that in part 5. So that's part 1 and part 2. For part 2, for the measurements, put them on the diagram. So put the measurements on the diagram and have a little statement for part 2, how you measured. If you haven't done that, include it today. For part 3 of your work, it asks you to do the total surface area. Remember to break it down and then subtract the bits that don't need to be painted. So do a whole wall and then subtract bits that don't need to be painted. Show workings and link them to the diagram that you've drawn here. So if you're doing workings from diagram 1 or wall 1, make sure you're saying that and have a total for each wall, and then add them all together for a total surface area, like some of you put in the chat there. Okay, for part 4, part 4 is quite a straightforward task. Once you have this surface area, part 4 asks for how many tins of paint you're going to use. So 1 tin will cover 2 meters squared. So if you have, for example, 40 meters squared as your answer, if I divide that by 2, I will get 20 tins. So if I have 20 tins of paint, and each one costs 350,000 IDR, I multiply that answer then by 350,000 and I get an answer. Now that's worked out very evenly for me. What happens if you get an answer like, oh, I need to buy 19.37 tins? You need to think about how many tins you go in and buy in the shop. So how you round. So you need to discuss how you round that answer. So you decide how you round the answer. What would you go into the shop and how many would you order? Okay. Part 5 then is a major part of the task. Now I presume that you may have thought that this was quite a straightforward part of the task, perhaps a short paragraph reflecting on real life aspects of this task. But things I definitely want you to discuss in this is rounding. So we see some surface area answers in the chat there. Let's just take Youp's answer, for example. He had 24 meters squared exactly. He obviously has rounded that at some stage, and there's nothing wrong with rounded, but we need to discuss how accurate rounded answers are. How much rounding did you do, and how much would that affect your answer? So could it be you actually have a range of areas? That if you round it down, you might have 23.5 meters squared. And if you round it up, you actually maybe have 25 meters squared. And you could say that your answer lies in between these, depending on how much you have rounded. That's an example of how you could discuss rounding, and you can give your bounds then of a range of values that it could be. So optimistically, maybe it's only this much, but pessimistically, if we were ordering paint, I'd probably over order. So that's the second thing that we need to discuss. So you can discuss your rounding, how much you rounded. Did you do it to 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, whole numbers? That's one thing you need to discuss in part 5. Part 6, not still in part 5, the real life part of this task. And the major thing is how many tins of paint. And that's you can adjust your answer in part 4. How many tins of paint would you order? And is there anything that would make you, so let's say your answer is exactly 20 tins of paint, like mine was in the previous one. Would you order 21 tins of paint in case anything goes wrong, or 22? Or would you try and stretch out 19 tins of paint? Okay, so you can talk about that, discuss it a little bit in that answer. So that's one thing. 2 things to discuss. Tins of paint or money, yeah. The tins of paint's directly related. The money answer should be in part 4 as well, yeah. So you can discuss the money, so it might cost more. Next thing is another real life thing, and it's the cost, which is the money. Is there anything else? So if you're painting a room, is there any other costs? So for instance, who paints it? So labor, are you going to do it yourself? You need to say, well, I plan to do it myself. Labor. What else would be needed to paint a room? Brushes, perhaps. Do brushes cost any money? Perhaps you could research how much paintbrush costs, or a roller. And you can include that and then increase your cost. That cost is probably going to be more than just the tin of paint. I'll take questions at the end. And the last thing is about accuracy. Is your answer perfect? Yeah, Louis, yeah. Yeah. Release tape is a good idea. Yeah. So perhaps for the cost, any extra cost, maybe just ask somebody at home, if I were painting this room, or you were painting this room, what would you do? And a lot of times they tape the corners of the air conditioner so you don't get any paint on the air conditioner, and tape isn't free. Perhaps you have to buy a roll of tape. So all these costs, estimate how much it would cost in total, including the tins of paint. So come up with a grand total, you could say, in part 5. And that, the better answers will have done research, perhaps gone online or asked somebody, or popped into, you don't need to pop into a shop, just go online, look on Tokopedia or something, or get your parents to help you out with that one. Or just work with a friend on it. I've got a lot of ants today. Is your answer perfect? And this is where the better answers would have photos, where you would take pictures of parts of the room where the room isn't perfect. Do you remember the corners of the table? When we did the corners of the table, it was kind of rounded. That's not perfect. Yet we presumed it was. Assumptions. The corner of the table wasn't perfect, yet we presumed it was a perfect rectangle when we got the area. Same thing could happen in your room. Perhaps there's little areas that you don't need to paint, or where the roof, the ceiling meets the roof, maybe there's a little gap there or something like that. A lot of rooms have that little gap. Does that need to be painted? Will that decrease or increase the area? So the better ones will have photos and a little discussion on why that makes the area bigger or smaller. Little discussion on that. And that is some help for part 5. As long as you've talked about these 4 things at a minimum, it should be fine. And these are really only the issues that could come up in this. So do discuss your rounding, how much you rounded, and why you rounded. And if you want, you include this range of values where you think it definitely lies between. It won't be any bigger than 25, and won't be any less than 23.5 as an example. Why you rounded to whole numbers? Perhaps because rounding it, having 9,737.37 centimeters and sending that to a contractor to do this, he or she would go, well, isn't that just 10 meters squared you're doing? Perhaps you would round just to a whole number. Second thing is, how many tins of paint would you actually buy? Would you do extra? And the third thing is then, are there extra costs? And can you estimate them and come up with a grand total? And the last thing then is discuss your accuracy. Is your answer perfect? And think about areas of the room where the room isn't perfect, therefore your answer won't be perfect. And can you back them up with some photographs for the better answers? All right, now I'll take some questions and then I'll let you get started on this. So questions, Ethan's first.
So I just have a problem with measuring in meters to send it to change it to centimeters. If I'm changing something like, for example, 9.21 meters, like this is not my actual thing, it's just an estimate.
Yeah.
9.21 meters times 6.34, then I would get 58.3 3914. How do I change that into centimeters? Do I times it by 100 there, or do I times it by 100 before the equation?
Now, if your answer is in meters squared, so either times the answer twice by 100 to get it into centimeters, or you could have times each of these once by 100 to start with centimeters. So if you want to turn that into centimeters squared, you multiply twice by 100. So in other words, multiply by 10,000.
Yeah, but is 583,914 a centimeter square is a good answer? A good answer?
A good
Because
answer?
that seems huge.
So, for example, if it's 20 meters squared, your room, that's going to be, if I multiply that by 100 twice, it's going to add 4 zeros to it. So 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 200,000 centimeters squared, and that's fine. Centimeter squareds are tiny. Meter squares are huge. So an example of a meter squared is about the size of the whiteboard here in the classroom. And if you compare that to the size of a centimeter squared, which is that size I've just drawn on the page, that's a centimeter squared. Tiny.
Okay then.
Yeah. Any other questions to type in the chat? All right, there's a few people I would like to stay on the line, otherwise you're free to go. Reminder, this has to be in before class starts tomorrow, not during class or at the end of class. The deadline is tomorrow, so you can work on it tonight if you need to, but you should probably finish it today in class, and you can upload it any time from now on if you want. If you think you're finished before the end of class today, you're probably not, but you can upload it anyway. So make sure you meet that deadline. So people that want to stay on the line, please today, can we have Lara, Aiken, Olivia, and just Yoop and Charlie, and yeah, just you guys. Can you just stay on the line for a minute, please? The rest of you guys are now free to go. I'll be here if you want to come in and ask me a question. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Okay, so some extra questions I will take now, but before that, can Aiken, Olivia, and Lara just go into Miss Whittian's meet, and you can work away with her today, please. And I'll take the extra questions now. Lauren, your question.
So I round up for the paint buckets, right?
Usually you would round up, yeah, because if you under order the paint, if you think about it, if you don't order enough paint, that means you have to go back to the shop and go back and get more paint. Whereas if you have too much paint, that's okay. You might be left with half a tin at the end, but that's all right. At least you don't have to go back to the shop. That's usually the way people would do it.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay. Liba?
So, on the last lesson, that was on Friday last week, then I was in Lembongan in a house.
Yeah.
And then on Tuesday, I was sick.
Yeah.
And now I'm back home again. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this is only a practice task, so do the best you can on this. We'll definitely take that into account. If you want, you can have an extension if you need an extension, or if you want to do a room in your house now, that's okay. What do you think? Do you think you would get it finished for tomorrow?
I don't think so, but I can try.
Try, and if you need an extension, give me an email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Olivia. Charlie and you, I have deleted both yours, so that document is now gone. I presume that's
Okay, thank you.
And you can resubmit it later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Charlie.
Wait, so can we leave now?
Yeah, you can leave now. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
wanted to
Thank
say
you.
that.
Bye.
Make sure it's done.